American basketball fans suck. Or at least that's what mainstream media is telling us. For this reason, I decided that I wanted to look into the differences between fandom in the NBA and in the EuroLeague. For the purpose of explaining the governance and ownership structure of the NBA, I made this model. The black arrows symbolize the direction of power, and the green and red arrows symbolize the direction of capital gained and spent respectively. At the very top, we have the Board of Governors. The Board of Governors consists of one principal owner from each NBA franchise. A principal owner is an appointed stakeholder with at least a 15% stake in the franchise, and the principal owner is the stakeholder responsible for maintaining operational control of the franchise. Every principal owner on the Board of Governors has an equal stake in decisions made by the Board of Governors, regardless of the volume and financial situation of the franchise. In this democratic model, most consequential decisions require a supermajority. Beneath the principal owner and the stakeholders, we have the NBA franchises themselves. Being a stakeholder in an NBA franchise gives you territorial exclusivity, it gives you protection from rival franchises, and, best of all, it gives you access to shared NBA revenue streams, including national broadcasting contracts and licensing deals. But it also costs some money. For example, stakeholders take responsibility for franchise operations, including player payroll, arena costs, and local business development. At the right side of the model, we have the NBA Commissioner, Adam Silver, and the NBA brand. The Commissioner acts as the chief, the head of the NBA. He makes sure that rules are enforced, he manages day-to-day operations, and he represents the ownership interests in negotiations. And even though he is the chief of the NBA, he is ultimately an employee hired by and accountable to the Board of Governors. Finally, we have the NBA brand itself. It merely functions as a service organization that handles league-wide operations. Before, we learned that stakeholders in NBA franchises earn capital from the NBA, but they do also have to pay and contribute some capital to maintain the central office. Next up, we have the ownership and governance structure of the EuroLeague. As one might be able to see, it is quite different to the one of the NBA. First of all, we have the EuroLeague itself, which is a private company, and the EuroLeague functions both as a service organization, but the EuroLeague also owns the league itself. What is interesting though, is that some of the teams competing in the EuroLeague have a stake in EuroLeague, the company. Teams with a stake in the EuroLeague are the A-license clubs. A-license clubs are the founders of the EuroLeague, and they for sure gave themselves some benefits when making the league. For example, they have secured indefinite participation in the EuroLeague. Second of all, they have voting rights on major decisions. And third of all, they get a major share of the league's revenue. Beneath the A-license clubs, we have the B-license clubs. These clubs have no stake and voting right, but they do have some security as well. These clubs are on multi-year agreements, typically 3 to 5 years, and they therefore have the ability and the security to make larger investments in both infrastructure and players. Then finally, we have the wildcard teams. Each season in the EuroLeague, a small number of spots are allocated to wildcard invitees, typically domestic champions or runner-ups from major markets. These clubs have no guaranteed future participation and are effectively guests for a single season. As for the ownership of the teams themselves, EuroLeague teams have many ways to go about it. Teams in the EuroLeague can be member-owned socios, they can be privately owned like in the NBA, they can also be corporately owned, and some are even subsidiaries of football clubs. The franchise and commissioner structure of the NBA creates dangerous incentives for stakeholders to make decisions based on financial motives rather than of motives of increasing fan experience and the quality of play. It for sure does depend on the ownership itself, but some franchises have ownerships that see the team as an investment opportunity more than a passion project. On the contrary, the franchise structure does allow stakeholders who care about the franchise to implement changes for the better more quickly than it could otherwise have happened in a league with a different ownership structure. Examples of such include the likes of Mark Cuban with his turnaround of the Dallas Mavericks, and Stephen Ballmer with the new Intuit Dome and initiatives like The Wall. Another aspect with a big impact on fan experience is the board of governors and the A-licensed club ownership structure. Both contribute positively towards common growth goals in the respective leagues, but the EuroLeague, being controlled by only some of the teams, not all of them like in the NBA, prioritizes decisions that are most beneficial for A-licensed clubs. This makes sense. The A-licensed clubs own the league, therefore they want to make rules that help themselves. This makes it tougher for teams competing in the EuroLeague without an A license to thrive and gain power and gain control of their future, which will eventually trickle down to the fans of said teams. Another aspect that significantly impacts fan experience is the clause of territorial exclusivity in the NBA. With the knowledge of there being no competition in the surrounding area, teams are not in as competitive an environment as they otherwise could have been. On the other hand though, clubs in Europe have no territorial exclusivity and must therefore often compete against multiple teams in the same area or even the same city. Another aspect that significantly impacts fan experience is that teams are unable to experience promotion nor relegation. This is true for the NBA, and it is also partially true for the EuroLeague. As mentioned before, teams in the EuroLeague, they sign contracts for a certain amount of guaranteed seasons, independent from their performance in said seasons. Fandom in both leagues take considerable damage from these systems, which make games less special and important, and therefore the emotional value of the games and the emotional value of your team winning or losing less important. On top of this, the guaranteed contracts make domestic leagues weaker because teams they focus more on the international competition than the national domestic competition. Although the EuroLeague has a lot of things that negatively impact fan experience, there are some good aspects in the structure of the EuroLeague. For example, there is the guarantee for big game every match week. There's also the long-term investment in arenas and production, and deeper rivalries because they are competing against the same teams over an extended period of time. Along with the rise of globalization and social media came the opportunity to sell more and sell more often. While it being a good business strategy, it can also be pretty hurtful towards the buyers themselves. One thing that makes fandom a lot less attractive is feeling more like a consumer than a member of a community. Instead of being content with selling tickets, clothing, and broadcasting rights, the NBA and its franchises are hyper-focused on optimizing sales through the collection of data and even real-time engagement, like sports betting and other advertisement. The same goes with watering down the league into short-form content littered with sponsorships, advertisements, etc. When every moment is monetized, advertised, and edited, the shared feeling of our team instead becomes my feed. The connection to the team becomes personal, not communal. The league might get paid, but the fans do not necessarily feel more connected or loyal towards the team. Also, the sheer amount of activation makes moments feel less special. If everything is an activation, then nothing is a memory. To understand the difference in emotional connections towards teams in the NBA and in the EuroLeague, we first have to understand the psychology of sports fandom. The feeling of belonging is crucial in sports fandom. Fandom is not about individuality, it is about community. Community is a necessity for human well-being, and sport fans get their fix through shared rituals among support groups, and then through these rituals they shape strong shared identities. Along with belonging, we have consistency. Life has a lot of unexpectancies, and it is therefore important to have the comfort of some consistency. For many, the comfort of consistency comes through a sports team and the community behind it. The regularity of matches and seasons gives fans a sense of stability and expectation. Another important aspect are the emotional highs and lows. The ups and downs of sports is a shared experience, and things like outcomes, sensations, and spectacular moments can be felt throughout fandom communities. These feelings deepen the bond between the fan and the team. Lastly, we have the narratives. Teams and players are part of an ongoing storyline in which fans empathize. The journey of the team throughout a season, the growth of players, or the rivalry between teams creates a compelling story which the fans follow closely. These stories give depth to fan experiences and strengthen emotional bonds. To further get an understanding of the emotional connections in sport fandom, we have to take a look at the science behind the psychology of sports fandom. First of all, we have what is called emotional memory. Connections that fans feel often come through powerful emotional memories like huge victories or devastating losses. These moments are not just statistics, but they are connected to actual emotions and experiences. Second of all, we have what are called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are basically neurons that fire when we see someone else doing something. The importance of these mirror neurons are that when sports fans see the players on the court, their brains imitate the experience and they get a taste of what it might be like being out there. It makes fans feel like they are involved in the game, and it makes the game more relatable. Third of all, we have what is called tribal psychology. Supporters more than just watching the game and rooting for a win. Serious supporters assimilate the colors, chants, and ceremonies of the team and its communities. This sense of belonging is far beyond logic, and it utilizes the basic desire of human beings to connect and unify with others. Shared routines and symbols create unity, and this tribal sense makes it hard for fans to leave. You and I are not the only one that know about the science and psychology behind sports fandom. So do all the companies competing to sell their product and brand through sport. Through extensive research, they figured out exactly what emotional sensations drive fan engagement and spending. Emotionally charged moments makes fans more inclined to engage and spend money. Such moments trigger strong emotional responses, leading to increased engagement and spending. The desire for closer connections makes fans spend money on goods, tickets, and limited content to make the team feel more familiar. Such consumption is driven by the desire to be part of the team. Empathy in marketing tries to hijack the bond that the fans have with the team and make it towards the brand instead. Therefore, successful brands and sports organizations understand and empathize with their fans. By recognizing the emotional drivers, these organizations can create marketing strategies that resonate deeply with their audience. Most concerning of all is the behavioral tools that track how fans interact, what they watch, and when they're most active. This information helps identify which fans are most likely to re-engage, spend, and share content. By paying attention to fan habits, brands can create targeted campaigns that speak directly to individual preferences, making fans feel more heard, valued, and more likely to stay loyal. So what is it that makes European fans more invested and better than American fans? It is all about emotional connection. For one, the ownership structure of the NBA means that some teams suffer from uninterested owners or owners that care more about their money than the team and its fans. The government structure of the NBA also has some aspects that damage the emotional connections from the fans. The fact that NBA teams have territorial exclusivity and the fact that they have no opportunity for promotion and relegation creates a safety net for NBA teams, a safety net that lowers the stakes. In addition to this, the NBA draft structure actually awards teams that spend entire seasons tanking. But the thing hurting fandom in the NBA the most is the philosophy of treating the fan as a consumer more than a fan. NBA fans are constantly having their behavior tracked and their lives bombarded with advertisements and microtransactions. On the contrary, European basketball has many aspects that make the fans feel valued and the emotional connections deepened. For example, most European teams have long and significant cultural histories and are more embedded in society. European basketball teams also have a category of fans by the name of ultras. Ultras are extreme supporters with extreme emotional connection to the team. A little side note, most NBA arenas don't even have standing sections, which in Europe is a crucial contributor to the ambience at basketball games. Lastly, and most blatantly, the price of being a fan of the NBA is ridiculous. Streaming is more expensive, tickets are more expensive, jerseys are more expensive, and the list goes on. This is a key contributor as to why American fans are less invested, because being a fan of the NBA becomes more complicated and consequential. This was a big one. I hope you guys enjoyed another one of these video essays, and as always, please do tell me if you have any subject, team, or player that you want to see a breakdown of. But that was all I had for you in this one. Peace out.